And we are here in Jerusalem. Josh Hasten, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. There's a big something or other going on right now, and a lot of people don't really understand what it is, what it's about, why it's so important. What I'm talking about is the U.S. election for the 38th World Zionist Congress, which is taking place now. Voting is already open until March 11th, 2020. Vote for your voice in Israel. That's what the campaign's website says. So, our good friend Yehuda HaKohen is actually very involved in this election. He is a leader of the Vision Slate. They are one of your options, one of your choices for casting your ballot at the World Zionist Congress. The campaign slogan of the Vision Slate is empowering the next generation. Yehuda HaKohen joins me now here in Jerusalem. Yehuda HaKohen, welcome back to Israel Uncensored.
Thanks for having me.
So if you can, explain to the listeners what exactly is the 38th World Zionist Congress. What's it all about? What are these elections, Yehuda?
So I think the first question we'd have to ask is why there's a World Zionist Congress 53 years after we returned to Zion. Like, what is this all about? And the truth is, from my perspective, our revolution isn't finished. In gathering exiles, reviving a dead language, freeing our country from the British, returning to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria. It's not the end of what we're here to do, and there's a lot more for us to be working towards in terms of advancing the goals of Jewish liberation and reviving Hebrew civilization in the 21st century. So I think that if there's a World Zionist organization 53 years after we've returned to Jerusalem, we need to really ask ourselves some very important questions about what the next goals of Jewish history are, what are the obstacles standing in our way, how can we use the resources of the official Zionist movement, including billions of dollars, to identify and achieve the next goals of Jewish history.
So explain that. You mentioned billions of dollars. When people are voting in this election, what is that money all about? Where is it coming from? Where is it going currently? And how can a vote for vision change where some of those dollars end up?
Well, it's not as if the party with the most seats gets awarded a big, sack of money. There are departments and there are budgets and there are positions that will be decided at the World Zionist Congress based on which parties come in the strongest. What we've managed to do over the last 5 years, just to give you a small example of what can be done, is we've managed to redirect money from the JNF, from the Jewish National Fund, Kakal, towards land purchases in Judea and Samaria. Now, meaning I think we're the only party I could think of that's actually used the Zionist institutions to resist a two-state solution.
And your catchphrase here is empowering the next generation. Is your campaign exclusively for young people? Are you targeting all ages? Who exactly do you hope to garner votes from here?
Well, we're not exclusively targeting young people, but most of our candidates are actually young, politically active Jews who have very strong feelings about what the next goals of Jewish history are and who want to come in. And I think there's a frustration among the university students who are active in the struggles of our people, whether it's fighting BDS, whether it's having real conversations about whether or not Jews are white, where we fit in to the identity politic of America, whether or not we should even be living in America, like Jews who are young and politically active and who are really having these conversations on a deep level feel completely unrepresented by the older generation and most of the mainstream parties in the Zionist movement. So I think there is this desire to empower the next generation who most of the decisions of the World Zionist Congress will impact with the democratic ability to influence those decisions.
So I want to understand this correctly. So if you're an Israeli citizen, you vote in the Israeli election, this is not for you, right?
No, but we do have a deal with certain parties here who will be giving us their representation to the Congress. Meaning, I'll make it simple for some listeners. If you're an American Jew who thinks that if you were living in Israel, you would be a Likud voter, you probably want to vote for ZOA. If you're an American Jew who says, if I was living in Israel, I'd vote for Yamina, which is the party of Ayelet Shaked and Bezalel Smotrich, etc., then you should vote for us. Meaning we do have an agreement with Smotrich's party, Tkuma, National Union. We have an agreement with Shaked's party, Yemin Chadash, and we have an agreement with another party, actually, Eli Yosef's Haleva Yehudi, which is a party that's really fighting to stop arms sales to human rights abusers, which I think is a deeply Jewish value. I think part of the conversation we're trying to have is what actually makes a state Jewish on a deep level, beyond superficial decorations on national institutions and a demographic majority. Like, how do you really create a nation state in the 21st century that's expressing our identity, expressing our values, really on the national level? And that includes, whether or not banks charge interest, whether or not Shemitah every 7 years has socio-economic ramifications, whether or not we sell weapons to human rights abusers. It's not just about buses on Shabbat, although even the issue of buses on Shabbat need to take into consideration the bus driver and not merely the people who want to take the bus somewhere.
So what you're saying is that you have the WZC delegates who are here in Israel essentially are made up of the political parties, and then those in the states, and this is the key, I think, of this whole process, is to allow those Jews who perhaps feel marginalized or don't have enough say into where things go. And that's been a big conversation over the last couple of years. Let's say I'm a Jew living in the States, and I'm upset about issue X, Y, or Z. But now you're saying is that you actually have a voice by casting a ballot, which I believe, what does it cost, $7.50?
Well, we actually had a big fight with the American Zionist movement about lowering the cost for students. It used to be $5 for students. They raised it to $7.50. It used to be $10 for grown-ups. They lowered it to $7.50, and they raised it for students. And we already had a very successful fight against the Zionist institutions to restore the $5 discount for those 25 and under. Now, those 26 and over will still have to pay $7.50, but students are able to vote for us for $5.
So basically, you can vote online. You're talking about 3 minutes of your life,
right,
more or less, that you can really...
It's ZionistElection.org.
ZionistElection.org. You really have a big influence about where these dollars go. And folks, we're talking about $1 billion budget here. If you take into consideration, all the different big organizations here in Israel, I guess NGOs, if you want to call them, those who are not in the Knesset but have a huge representation, the Jewish Federation, the Jewish Agency, World Zionist Congress,
the JNF,
and whatnot. So you can make a big difference here. I'm going to just give you one more opportunity, Yehuda HaKohen.
First of all, you could check out our party's website at visionmovement.org.
That's what I was going to do, is ask you, if I was a voter, which I'm not because I voted in this election here in Israel.
But you can help us by voting for Yamina.
Oh, that I could do here in this country.
Right, or Leva Yehudi.
I will not divulge where I'm voting. That my listeners know. I never reveal that publicly, but convince me. I'm going up to the...
we're slate number 5.
Slate number 5 for the Vision. 20 seconds. Why should I vote for Vision?
Because we actually have a vision for where this country needs to go, and we are very strategic in terms of how to use the resources at our disposal to accomplish that vision.
Give us the website one more time for voting.
Well, for us, it's visionmovement.org. For voting, it's zionistelection.org. We're slate number 5, Vision Party.
Yehuda HaKohen, representing the Vision Party. He's one of the leaders on the Vision slate, empowering the next generation. Folks, if you want your voice to be heard, vote for your voice in Israel. That is what the campaign is, to get people to vote in this very, very important election, which takes place once every 5 years.
Right, it's happening now.
To the WZC, the World Zionist Congress, happening now till March 11th, so get out the vote. And Yehuda HaKohen, good luck to you and your party, and thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a short break, come right back with more here on this edition of Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. We are here in beautiful Jerusalem where the sun is shining. It's another glorious day here in the eternal capital of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, Joshua Hasten or Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism. On Twitter at Josh Hasten, and now on Instagram as well. Short break. We're coming right back.
This is Eve Harrow for the Land of Israel Network. You can start every week with me, hearing views and interviews with fascinating people, some well-known, others homegrown, about places I guide, ideas I have to get you thinking too. It's about the land. It's about my people. It's about our collective journey. Rejuvenation with Eve Harrow, Sundays on the Land of Israel Network. Listen in. Share the ride.
And And we are back. Josh Hasten here. Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com for Monday, the 3rd of February, 2020, the 8th of Shvat, 5780. So, of course, the big news this week is the release of Donald Trump's deal of the century. And I'm sure by now you've heard many commentators giving their opinions on the president's plan for peace between Israel and her Arab neighbors. So much has been written over the course of a week, and I just wanted to briefly, in the next few minutes, give my take on the situation. And the real question, I think, is, can we accept what we like about the plan and reject what we don't? Okay, I think that is the big question, especially when we're talking about annexing Judea and Samaria, and also, God forbid, the establishment of a so-called Palestinian state. I mean, first of all, it's honestly sad. I think it's sad that we need approval from others before doing what we want to do in our own country. I think the whole situation is sad that we are so dependent on what I understand. The United States is a great friend and they're the biggest superpower in the world. It's sad that we don't act on our own. We don't do what we need to do before doing what's necessary, doing what's in our best interests. That's upsetting to me. And that's just a side point right now, but maybe that's the main point. So first off, that's on my mind. But can we accept full sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, at least over so-called Area C, or the communities in Area C, to be specific, the Jewish communities, and reject parts of the plan that call for a PA state? I mean, that's the big question. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, as the week started, there was optimism that we were going to go ahead and carry out the annexation immediately. And then it seems at this point that it's not going to happen anytime soon, at least not until the elections. Maybe, who knows, maybe there'll be a cabinet meeting later on this week and the prime minister will go ahead and annex the Jewish communities in Area C. But I don't know. I don't think at this point it's likely. I mean, there was so much optimism, but I'm not sure right now. But this is why Carolyn Glick, who's a friend of the show, renowned author, writer, this is why she's excited. Based on her conversation with U.S. Ambassador David Friedman, she published some of that conversation in an article titled "The Oslo Blood Libel is Over in Israel Hayom" just the other day. And she's sharing this conversation with Ambassador Friedman. And as Friedman explained to Carolyn Glick, the Palestinians have 4 years to agree to the president's plan. To reach a deal, they have to agree to recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. They have to accept Israeli control over the airspace and the electromagnetic spectrum. They have to agree to a demilitarized state and accept that there will be no Palestinian immigration to Israel from abroad. They have to agree to Israeli sovereignty over the border with Jordan. They have to disarm Hamas, Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and demilitarize Gaza. If they do that, we will recognize them as a state, and they will receive the rest of Area C. Again, this is Ambassador David Friedman talking to Carolyn Glick, and I think other journalists there in the room. So Carolyn asks, what if they don't agree? What if they don't agree to those terms? If they don't agree, says Friedman, then at the end of 4 years, Israel will no longer be bound by the terms of the deal and will be free to apply its law to all areas it requires. So Carolyn then asks, you're telling me that in 4 years we'll be able to apply Israeli law on the rest of the territory? Yes, that's right, said Friedman. You mean the Palestinians lose if they don't agree to peace? Does President Trump support this? I asked. That's Carolyn Glick talking in stunned disbelief. Yes, of course, he supports this. It's his plan after all, Friedman said, smiling and a bit surprised at my reaction. So, in other words, okay, if all of that is accurate, in other words, Carolyn Glick believes, and this is why she was so excited, that there's no chance of a PA state, and in 4 years, all of those areas will be in Israeli hands. Not just the initial communities in Judea and Samaria, but all Jewish communities. And I guess that would mean if the PA doesn't accept this plan, it doesn't fulfill those clauses, that therefore they would not have this state. And again, that's why it seems that Carolyn Glick here is excited about the plan. On the other side, again, as I mentioned before, we are here on Monday in Israel, a week after the plan was introduced, and Israel has not annexed anything. So the question is, what will be? Mahmoud Abbas, of course, said 1,000 no's. That's what he said to the plan. So what will we do here in Israel? What will our government do? I know we're in election season again. The main question is, what will we do with this opportunity? Will we take the opportunity and do what's in our interests, plan or no plan, deal or no deal? That is what remains to be seen, folks. So that, in a nutshell, is my take, and I wanted to throw that Carolyn Glick conversation in because I think that's so important in terms of the positive aspects of this plan. Of course, as I've said throughout the years, a Palestinian state will be an existential threat to the state of Israel, and it cannot come to be. And that's why I started this discussion asking, can we take parts of the plan and reject other parts of the plan? I don't know the answer. The details are unclear. If Israel was ready to annex at the beginning of the week, and then all of a sudden, somebody said, I don't know who it was, said, no, we have to study the maps, and it's going to take a few months, and the administration doesn't want Israel to do it right away, and we're going to go along with that. The whole thing is murky. The whole deal is murky, but you can see some optimism from our friends, some of our friends who think like I do and like we do as a whole here, when it comes to doing what's best for Israel. Turning here to reaction from Arabs with Israeli citizenship. This is hysterical, actually. Times of Israel reports that hundreds of Arabs with Israeli citizenship, Arab Israelis, demonstrated in northern Israel on Saturday against the U.S. peace plan, blasting its inclusion of a clause which proposes redrawing the borders to include minority towns in the so-called triangle in a future Palestinian state. According to the articles, locals fear that as citizens of a Palestinian state, they would lose the benefits of Israel's thriving economy, its health and welfare system, and the freedom to enter Israel. In other words, here you have dozens and dozens and hundreds of Israeli Arabs who call themselves Palestinians, but they are reaping the benefits of living under the control of the state of Israel, and they don't want to lose that control. One of the clauses, if you go read all 180 pages of the plan, you will see that one of the clauses says that perhaps the so-called triangle, the Wadi Ara triangle there, will be turned over to the Palestinian Authority, and the Israeli Arabs don't want that. They claim that it's because they believe that Israel, they don't use the word Israel, that Palestine or what have you is their homeland, but in reality, they don't want to live under the PA state. And that's what makes this thing so funny. They're standing up for years, standing up for PA rights and identifying with their brothers who are living in Judea and Samaria, what they call the West Bank. Yet when push comes to shove, they know they have it better in Israel than in any other Arab country in the entire Middle East. They know they have it better here, living under Israeli control. And the Arabs living under Palestinian Authority control, they know that they have it good as well, especially those who are working alongside Israelis, working for Israeli companies and making 7 times the amount that Arabs are making under the Palestinian Authority. The PA is far from being a good so-called government, a good leadership, if you will, but the PA Arabs probably have it second best in all the Arab world when it comes to opportunity, and that's thanks to Israel. That's because of Israeli intervention and somewhat of an Israeli control over those areas and the the opportunities granted to the Arabs living under PA control because of what Israel offers them. Okay? Just check out the cars zooming up and down Route 60 and see how many PA plates are on the backs of Mercedes and BMWs and all the other fancy schmancy cars, Land Cruisers and Land Rovers. They're doing okay over there. They don't want you to believe it, but with the mansions and estates throughout the Palestinian Authority-controlled areas, a lot of them are doing just fine. Thank you very much. They don't have the freedoms that Israel provides because they're living under the tyrannical Palestinian Authority, but they're doing overall pretty well. That's for sure. As we mentioned before, Mahmoud Abbas, his rejection, reported here by the Jerusalem Post. Once again, this isn't the first time he's threatened to do so, threatening to sever all relations with Israel and the U.S. in protest against the peace plan. Great, I say. Who needs Mahmoud Abbas? Who needs him? He wants to sever ties. Go right ahead. But this is a bluff. He's not severing any ties with Israel. And I guarantee you, if Donald Trump came calling, they would respond, even with all the threats and perhaps temporary rejection. At the end of the day, if the president of the U.S. called, I think that they would come forward and at this point take the call. Abbas then threatening that they are going to cut off security ties and disregard all agreements over the last 25 years. Well, they've disregarded them from day one, okay? They were supposed to crack down on terror, and instead they carried out terror attacks, and they continue to praise terrorists, and they still have the pay-for-slay program. So any threat of breaking agreements, which have been in place over the last 25 years, is an absolute joke, because that is all they've been doing over the last 25 years, inciting to violence and breaking every agreement. I'm talking about Oslo, of course, that greatly flawed agreement, which they never kept. So these are just meaningless threats. Even as Abbas is quoted here in the J-Post as saying, the U.S. is no longer our friend. Boo-hoo. Cry me a river. I hope the president is paying attention to the attitude of Mahmoud Abbas, and I hope one day he will announce that the PA is I look forward to that day, that the PA is no longer a peace partner in the Middle East. I look forward to that day. And did you see the map that Mahmoud Abbas was holding there in the Arab League conference or what have you, meeting over the weekend? The title of the maps is it says the Palestinians Historic Compromise, and the map shows a pre-1947 Israel, and on it is labeled Historic Palestine. Let's remember that Palestine has never existed in the history of the world. You're talking about British mandated Palestine, of course, yet they claim that they have a historical connection, a historic tie to this area. And, of course, these are the maps that they use today when referring to Israel. They don't say Israel, of course. The Zionist entity is occupying all of Palestine, and that includes the entire country. The entire country, in their view, is one big settlement, okay? That's why the PLO was founded in 1964, 3 years before any so-called settlements existed. Yet this map is a complete fabrication of the truth. Okay, it shows you an entire map here. It says Palestine on it. Then it shows the UN partition plan, and then the 1967, they call it, borders. And they're making it look like the state of Palestine is shrinking, when in reality it is the state of Israel, which has been shrinking, unfortunately, throughout the years, starting way back in 1922, when the League of Nations essentially cut off the entire area east of the Jordan and created Transjordan, handed that area over to the Hashemites. That was supposed to be part of the Jewish state. And ever since then, with the partition plan, on and on and on, Israel, the withdrawal from Gaza, which we did, Israel has been shrinking. Very sad to say, but a lie in the form of a map used there by Mahmoud Abbas. Something that Israel did, which is positive over the last several days, reported here by Arut Sheva. Israel, at least for now, is halting cement deliveries to Gaza. Kogat, the coordinator of government activities in the territories, announced that Israel would halt the cement imports into Gaza and would cut 500 entry permits into Israel for Gaza merchants starting on Sunday, yesterday, until further notice. The announcement comes in the wake of continued rocket and incendiary balloon attacks from Gaza into Israel. I saw some haunting footage this morning of one of those balloons which was launched into Israel and landed in a field and then exploded. Imagine if, God forbid, that balloon would have exploded in a children's kindergarten. God forbid. More and more of these balloons in recent days have been launched into Israel. It should be it should be considered a war crime, and Israel should respond accordingly. Israel did strike Gaza on Saturday night after more rockets were fired. But these balloons are God forbid, but I think this is a disaster waiting to happen. If one of these balloons lands on a house or in a nursery school or whatnot. And then we did see over the weekend also a 2-week-old baby was severely injured when her mother was running for a shelter holding her baby, slipped and fell down a flight of stairs. The baby's in stable condition but suffered head wounds. That is also on Hamas and the terror organizations in Gaza for creating an environment where women have to scoop up their babies out of the cribs and run for their lives. And accidents like that do happen in the process. I'm not saying that the firing of rockets was an accident. That, of course, was an intentional act of attempted murder. But people need to realize that these sorts of things happen. People are getting hurt running towards shelters. And even if there aren't any physical injuries, every single code red alarm, which sounds in the South, creates trauma for the next generation of children growing up under fire. It's not acceptable. And hopefully our Defense Minister, Naftali Bennett, will crack down even more. He's taken some positive steps here. And I'm sure he's behind the halting of cement and other things he's done. But we cannot accept the balloons, the explosive balloons being flown in, or the rockets. It has been 19 years, for crying out loud. It is not acceptable. Finishing on some positive news, the rains keep coming here in Israel. I think this is the third or fourth week in a row that I've talked about the weather. But the Kinneret, the Lake of Galilee, continues to rise with more rain over the weekend. And that is certainly something that we're happy about here in Israel. And that's going to do it for today, Monday, the 3rd of February, 2020, the 8th of Shvat, 5780. Thanks so much for listening. Shout out to Benjamin Bresky for all the work he does, engineering these podcasts. Tabitha Epstein as well for everything she does behind the scenes, getting these shows put together. My name is Josh Hasten. This has been another edition of Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, or Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram as well. Coming to you from Gush Etzion, Israel. Thanks so much for joining me. Everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom, shalom. Have a great week.
You're listening to the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, broadcasting the truth and beauty of Israel.